What does the Marshmallow Test really show? It is the ability to delay gratification pre-wired. How can it be taught? What is its downside? This book speaks to these questions and the answers are often surprising. In the Marshmallow Test, I discuss what willpower is and what it is not, the conditions that undo it and the consequences of having it and using it. I examine the implications of these findings for rethinking who we are, what we can be, how our minds work, how we can and can't control our impulses, emotions, and dispositions, how we can change and how we can raise and educate our children. In writing the Marshmallow Test, I imagine myself, this is one of the most famous experiments ever done. You should pay close attention, please. You really get a lot out of this. And writing the Marshmallow Test, this is the book based on the experiment. I imagine myself having a leisurely conversation with you, the reader, much like the many I have had with friends and new acquaintances, sparked by this question: what's the latest in the marshmallow work? Soon we veer off into how the findings relate to aspects of our own lives, from child rearing, hiring new staff, and avoiding unwise business and personal decisions, to overcoming heartbreak, quitting smoking, controlling weight, reforming education, and understanding our own vulnerabilities and strengths. I have written the book for those of you who, like me, have struggled with self-control. I've also written it for those who simply would like to understand more deeply how our minds work. I hope the Marshmallow Test will start some new conversations for you. How's it going, guys? Awesome Mail, Rhymes, and KO. The book review for the Marshmallow Test by Walter Mischel. This is one of the most famous psychologists, one of the most famous studies ever. And that's when the first time I had read it, for years I thought it was Mischel, because that's when I first was taught this. This is one of the most famous experiments ever done. You take any psychology book, any book on, development, on brain development, brain power, willpower. They talk about this book. We've talked about this many times. It's one of the reasons why we have a picture of the marshmallow out front. This is in my one sentence summary: how improving the skill of delayed gratification in one area can improve every area of your life. He passed away, unfortunately, in 2018. This work, this book that he wrote, this is the guy who did this, by the way. He wrote this in 2015, I believe. The book, it was like 50 years after he did this. The first study was a Stanford marshmallow experiment in 1972. BigRia.com, the world's number one channel on YouTube, the number one YouTube channel for Indiana real estate. We're building the world's largest organization of special needs business owners and real estate investors. This is the world's clearest instructions for how anyone can create 30 grand a month of passive income. Out-of-state Indiana investors, how you can create 30 grand a month of passive income. It's amazing. Go there now. BigRia.com. Do it now. All right. This Stanford marshmallow experiment. If you're not familiar with the experiment, here's how it goes. They have a group of kids. They come into a room and they say, hey, if you guys want a marshmallow, you can have one marshmallow, or you can, and it could be a cookie or something desirable, right? You could have one right now, right? Or two if you wait 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 15 minutes, right? And that's it. The game is afoot, right? So what they find out, two kids or a group of kids, they all want this thing, presumably equally, right? They all want the cookie, they all want the marshmallow, whatever, right? But if you wait, you can get more of it. If you just wait, you get like twice as much. If you wait a very small period of time, like 10, 15, 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, if you wait. And what they found is the people who wait, the people who are able to delay their gratification, they followed them through life, not just through elementary school, but through junior high, through high school, through young adulthood, and far into their lives. And they found out that they make better decisions on just about everything. They don't just have better grades. They don't just have better careers. They also have better marriages. They also become better parents. They make better life choices by, this is kind of like a muscle, the ability to delay gratification. Think of it like a muscle. The more you flex it, the stronger it gets. Because once they found that what he just went over, he said, is this an innate pre-wired ability to delay gratification, this skill? And what he found through his work, his 50 plus years of work, is that no, it is not. You can actually train yourself and build it. This is really cool stuff. All right, so that was the first lesson. Second lesson here, a high gratification delay is a marker of greatness. Being able to delay the gratification is a marker of greatness. Really cool stuff here. So this is like the whole crux of his work. Was this the place to put? Like this was the this is the summary here. So what the preschoolers did is they tried to keep waiting. This is the first experiment he did, and how they did or didn't manage to delay gratification unexpectedly turned out to predict much about their future lives. The more seconds they waited at age 4 or 5, the higher their SAT scores, and the better they rated social and cognitive functioning in adolescence. At age 27 to 32, they followed them for decades. Not creepy at all. Those who had waited longer during the marshmallow test in preschool had a lower body mass index. They weren't the fat asses like, this kid, don't throw that. And a better sense of self-worth, pursued their goals more effectively, and coped more adaptively with frustration and stress. At midlife, those who could consistently wait, high delay, the high delay of gratification, versus those who couldn't, low delay of gratification, LCs, were characterized by distinctively different brain scans in areas linked to addiction and obesity, right? This is, how well does this marry like with our work right now, right? Your brain actually is different the more of an LC you are, the more low delay you're able to have, or you're not able to think about the future. Ultimately, we have, the Dalai Lama said that humans are the only organisms that can see how their actions affect 100 years from now, right? I always add to that, I say that, what are you doing with that skill? The ability to think 100 years in the future. We're the only ones that can do that. The higher up the achievement ladder you go, the more you'll see people think, the ultra high achievers think about a longer, broader time frame, right? So the guy who's building a lot of what we're doing, we're thinking about generations ahead. We're thinking about 100, 200 years ahead. How would the work we're doing right now affect affect the next generation, right? Versus someone who's like, I just need to make money this week, right? You talk to billionaires, they're looking at how can the next, several centuries be shaped? What's going to be different? What's going to be coming for humanity, for, Mars exploration, or exploring asteroids and, mining minerals from them so that we can use them here on Earth to improve Earth or to terraform other planets and make them suitable for Earth. One of my favorite, he sent me that clipping, said, the ultimate optimist said that the guy's running for president. So something, it says, hopefully, according to the NRA, that we should have the first school shooting on the moon by like 2050 or whatever. So but this idea of like constantly looking like, a broader scale, what's going to happen in centuries to come. The child who can't wait a minute can manage to wait for 20 when he changes his thoughts about the temptations. To me, that finding is more critical to the long-term correlations because it points to the way that strategies that can enhance self-controllability. This right here, this few sentences, and on the next slide, the 50 plus years, half a century of work is summed up right here. Read that part again. The child who can't wait a minute can manage to wait for 20 when he changes his thoughts about the temptations. To me, that finding is more critical to the long-term correlations because it points to the way strategies that can enhance the self-controllability and reduce stress. Self-control is crucial for the successful pursuit of long-term goals. It is equally essential for developing the self-restraint and empathy needed to build, caring, and mutually supportive relationships. It can help people avoid becoming impervious to consequences or getting stuck in jobs they hate. It is the master aptitude underlying emotional intelligence essential for constructing a fulfilling life. This process here, this idea that you can go through this exercise and actually enhance this ability to have high delay, the high delay of instant gratification, and the more you do it, it becomes like a muscle, is really the crux of all of his work and what you can do. Lesson: trust and focus on who and what you want to become. Imagine that you have agreed to let your brain activity be imaged while you're inside an fMRI machine. Your head is deep in the machine and you're getting used to the confined space as the instructions come through the speaker. Please think about yourself. When you do, a distinctive pattern of brain activity, you guys will recognize this. This is a very famous, very well-known experiment. We can do this with EEG and we can track brain waves on this as well. So imagine that you're in an MRI, an fMRI machine, or you're in we're having an EEG, like the shower cap on your head. Please think about yourself. When you do, a distinctive pattern of brain activity will become visible in the mid-front area of your cerebral cortex, which we call the self pattern. Next, the instructions ask you to think about a stranger, and in the same area of the cerebral cortex, a distinctively different pattern becomes activated, the stranger pattern. So we have two patterns, self pattern, stranger pattern. Now, the EEG doesn't do this. It measures the waves, not necessarily the parts of the brain, as well as the fMRI machine. But the point is that there's two things that come. The self pattern, we can tell if you're thinking about yourself or thinking about a stranger. Finally, you are asked, please think about yourself 10 years from now. An interesting thing happens. If you see more continuity between yourself now and yourself in the future, you probably put more value on delayed rewards and less value on immediate rewards and are less impatient than people who view their future selves as strangers. As the researchers point out, if we feel greater continuity with who we will become, we might also be willing to sacrifice more of our present pleasures for the sake of the future self. Arguably, the best answer to the what can we do to help our children question is to model what you would like them to become. We talk about this concept, be what you seek. Don't try to, motivate others until you've motivated yourself. The first person that you need to get compliance from, that your words, thoughts, actions need to inspire and you need to gain compliance to have the optimal thoughts, actions, and feelings and, thoughts, actions, and speech, words, is yourself. You have to get compliance from yourself before anybody else. But this idea, the more connected you are, the more you actually think about 5 years, 10 years, the more you think about that down the road, the more real it becomes, the more you'll make decisions based on what that guy wants. If you went back 10 years, you would tell yourself, hey, do push-ups every day because you don't feel like you're not going to feel the pain. But as we're going to talk about, you can go through this and not have to feel the pain of the transition. Just as easy as a state of mind, everything is easy if you're not an LC. As with all efforts to change long-standing patterns and learn new ones, whether playing the piano or exercising self-restraint to avoid hurting the people we love, cheating on them, the prescription is to practice until it becomes automatic and intrinsically rewarding. This is super important. We talk about this all the time. People say like, oh, I have to make calls or I have to put out signs or I have to talk to this or I have to do this or I have to go out and send email. I have to learn how to write copy. The more you have to learn it, it's not going to get done. When you get to learn it, when it's exciting, that's the best place to be. At Stanford University, Carol Dweck, we've talked about her before, famous psychologist, she's in the same kind of category as Walter. Carol Dweck and her colleagues found that those who believed that their stamina fueled itself after tough mental exertion did not show diminished self-control after a depleting exercise. In contrast, those who believed that their energy was depleted after a strenuous experience did show diminished self-control and had to reset and had to rest to refuel. If you believe that this is everything that the brain comes down to, if you believe that stress or the challenges or the soreness that you're going to go through mentally is going to bring you down, it will bring you down. If you think it's going to be like a power bar for your brain, it's basically going to put your brain on steroids, it will do that. It activates a different series of thoughts, a whole different chemical reaction in your brain, and what you think about will become easier to think about, but it'll also be easier to solve problems, like the bigger and bigger problems you could solve. Really, man, this is like the crux of like everything that you'll do. How far you go in life is how well you can apply this and other concepts that we talk about. If you believe that persisting on tough tasks tasks is energizing rather than depleting, will it protect you from fatigue? Indeed, yes. When people are led to think that effortful tasks will invigorate rather than drain them, they improve their performance on a later task. I'll read that again. If you believe that persisting on tough tasks is energizing rather than depleting, it's going to be like playing a video game. You're going to enjoy it, right? Will it protect you from fatigue? Indeed, yes. When people are led to think that effortful tasks will invigorate rather than drain them, they improve their performance on a later task. You immediately do better. The man who says he can and the man who says he can't, both of them are right, Confucius. But I can't end this discussion without reiterating, a life lived with too much delay of gratification can be as sad as one without enough of it. We are both ants and grasshoppers, and to lose the hot emotional system and live continually dominated by the cool cognitive system in the service of a possible future can become a life story as unsatisfying as its opposite. The biggest challenge for all of us, not just for the child, may be to figure out when to wait for more marshmallows and when to ring the bell and enjoy them. But unless we can learn to develop the ability to wait, we don't have a choice. That line was really powerful. But unless we can develop the ability to wait, we don't have a choice. You're not going to ever know what the difference is. When I am asked to summarize a fundamental message from research on self-control, I always listen to this. Whenever people say, I always listen carefully when they say I'm asked to summarize or big secret or what's the big discussion. It's always something very simple. But this guy spent 50 years looking at this experiment and different ramifications on it. And what he's talking about, I recall Descartes' famous dictum, cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am. What has been discovered about mind, brain, and self-control lets us move from his proposition to I think therefore I can change what I am. Because by changing how we think, we can change what we feel, do, and become. If that leads to the question, but can I really change? I reply with what George Kelly said to his therapy clients when they kept asking him if he thought if they could get control of their lives. He looked straight into their eyes and said, "Would you like to?" And again, this is how he ends the book. This comes down to the idea of some of these things are exactly things that I really didn't read this book. I've been meaning to read this book for a while, but I didn't read it until just now. This is stuff we've been talking about for years. One of the first things we ask people is, do you actually want to get better? Do you want to improve? People want to be rich, but do you actually want to get rich? Do you want to get these things, this process going? And it's so ironic that I read this book now, because when we were talking earlier about why is it that not everyone makes 30 grand a month, like everyone in our world is getting there at light speed, right? Most people, anyone who's actually following the steps. But it comes down to when we talk about like cash flow and stuff like that, the reason why we don't focus on it right now is you have to be able to say, I have 100 grand, I have perfect credit, and I'm not going to touch it. I'm not going to use it for 5 years, 3 years, 5 years. Delay that gratification. Again, how much does that align with this? And if you can do that, it's amazing how far you can go. Okay, real quick, you guys, this is a time octopus. I love that you put this in here. Thank you so much for including it. This is how we have it. We work with addiction. We have an addiction center. We work with a lot of people with addiction. A lot of our special needs heroes that have mental illness. There's all sorts of, cognitive delays, bipolar disorders, but we also, part of that is also included addiction, not just for them, but also their parents often. So this is really one of the secrets that we've used to actually kick a habit. Raise your hand if this is something you're doing actively right now. Okay, so for all of you that see that, go and check them out, and you're gonna see them, they color this in. So you should actually color this in if you're starting out. So basically, look at this. We have healthy stuff that you want to do, which is all the same stuff. Eat right, exercise, don't drink and don't do drugs, don't, masturbate all the time. Healthy stuff that we should be doing, and then unhealthy stuff. We all know what this stuff is, right? You can categorize this stuff in your life. You should be studying, doing all that stuff correctly, right? So we have two things here, pain and pleasure. Here's our time. This is when we call, basically when we have anything we're doing, we're going to measure it on time. So what happens with the first stuff, the unhealthy stuff, right? What happens is that when you come out here, you have an initial burst of pleasure, right? Right here. You have immediate pleasure. But what happens if we were to chart this over time, it immediately comes down. That pleasure comes up. So how long does a piece of cake really help you? Or how long does it benefit you? How long does it feel good? Very little, right? Not even 3 minutes, not even 5 minutes, right? And then instantly, as soon as you eat that stuff, you feel bad. And so now it comes down. Our pleasure goes up for a second, but it comes right back down. But this right here, this is what the marshmallow test is about, the marshmallow experiment, but also all of our stuff. This little dopamine hit, this is the only reason why we do stupid shit. Because check this out. What happens over time? Of course, we have more and more pain. If after you eat a piece of cake, you're not better off in a week or a month or a year, especially if you keep doing that every week or if you do that with any kind of consistency. It's been said that you never get rid of a habit, you just build new habits, right? Smoking is a good example. This, people think it's enormously difficult. And you go through withdrawal when you sleep. It's that weak that it doesn't even wake you up. It's this monster you build in your head. It's this huge monster. But when you smoke or you do any of that stuff, you get an initial piece of pleasure, right? But then after that, it's always worse, right? This is unhealthy stuff. That's the definition. Initial pleasure, pain later on, and the pain just gets worse and worse and worse. It never gets better. It doesn't help you. Eating cheesecake is in no way going to benefit you in 1 week or even 1 hour, 1 year. It's just going to keep whatever effect that has is going to be a negative effect. Now let's look at healthy stuff. Problem with healthy stuff is that you have this initial initial pain, right? Eating vegetables, working out, studying, making calls, working on your business, whatever. We have that initial pain, right? That initial pain is really this is the only thing right here. When people say like, oh, it's really difficult to build my business, or oh, this shit is easy, man. It's ridiculously easy if you're not like a complete dickhead, if you're not a total LC. And whenever somebody asks me, or somebody says to me, when somebody says it's difficult, I always say difficult compared to what? Compared to the other ways you have of making 30 grand a month, making 50 grand, 100 grand a month, it's difficult compared to that? No, because you don't have other ways of doing that. It's difficult compared to what? It's difficult compared to watching Netflix. It's difficult compared to watching porn. It's difficult compared to masturbating, right? Because that's exactly when you're sitting down from, let's say 6:30 p.m., you could work on your business or you could watch porn. Watching porn gives you right here, it gives you immediate pleasure, right? And working on your business gives you a little bit of pain. But look what happens right here. The pain is over instantly. Almost, when people always say this, oh, I'm dreading making my calls. But once I start making them, I feel real better, right? Because it feels good to do good stuff. It feels good to do healthy stuff. It feels good to help people. It feels good to raise, opportunity and to raise awareness of opportunities. That stuff all feels good. We all feel the same way when we do that. Just anytime you do something simple, like picking something up or holding the door open for somebody, it feels good. Now, this pain is only for a few seconds, right? It doesn't last long because it feels good. But now look what happens. Over time, the healthy stuff just keeps benefiting more and more and more. If you make 10 calls today instead of watching that show on Netflix or instead of watching porn, right? Those 10 calls could actually change your life in a year, right? One of those calls could be something that benefits you working on your business, or one of those signs, or one of those emails or something like that, or working on your copywriting skill. That if you worked on writing headlines instead of watching Netflix, right? There's an immediate pain versus that pleasure. Now, this is why we call it the octopus, by the way, because it kind of looks like an octopus. It's not really, it looks more like a squid or a jellyfish, but it's the side. If you look at it sideways, see how this is the head and this is the octopus. But the ROI is negative on all the unhealthy stuff, and it's only positive later on. It's dramatically positive. There's no way, if I said to you a month ago, would you rather have eaten cake or done 10 push-ups? Nobody would pick eating the cake, right? If I said, okay, last week, that one cigarette you had at 4 p.m, would you rather have done that, or would you rather have, gone on a walk for 5 minutes? Would you rather have read for 10 minutes or had 2 cigarettes, right? Everyone looking back would pick would make the right choice, because you can look back and see what the ROI is. But if we can see the past, we can also predict the future, and we can also extrapolate how our decisions are going to affect what happens. But here's the crazy part. This is what not just the Marshmallow Test tells us, but all of our work. We've done a lot of work with thousands of heroes now, and we could tell you what happens. The more you do this, the reason why somebody who works out every day is because when they work out, it's like we was talking about earlier, the story they're telling themselves, the way they do it. Probably the most important part about the Marshmallow Test was that second page where it said they come in, they bring the marshmallow, they bring the cookie, and both kids have the same reaction. They both want that cookie, right? But it's what one of them does in reaction, right? That blueprint, that architecture of delaying the gratification, the architecture of what do I do when I really want something? You know what? I'm going to think about the future. In 10 minutes, I can get 2 cookies. And then what do? They go and they work out, or they go and they put a puzzle together. They go and they write, or they read, or they whatever. They do something. And so that kid is just sitting there staring at, oh my God, I want the cookie, I want the cookie. That's all they're thinking about. The shorter timeline you're thinking about, the less effective and less good, less well your decisions are going to be. The better decisions you're going to be, the best decisions you're going to make are going to be ones that think about the longer time. So if you ever have a decision to make and you have, well, I could do this or I could do that, ask yourself, which one of these is the longer, which one of these are you thinking about the longer time frame? And that's almost always going to be the correct answer. It's why I say this all the time, whether it's like religious or political or social, anytime you're going to argue with somebody, anytime people are arguing about anything, the person with the broader perspective is almost always right. So this is what we want to do. We need to understand that the only reason we do dumb shit is because of that initial pleasure, and then because of the initial pain. And then we can take what you were saying earlier, when we start making these choices now, we start coloring it out. So when you do things you shouldn't do, make this little color. We have the forms back there, and that's exactly what that form is. Take the marker and actually gauge, this gives me pleasure on a scale from 1 to 10. It gives me a pleasure of 7 when I eat cake, right? And then it's gone within 5 minutes, and then we can plot this part down here. And then we can start having replacements. Instead of the cake, I could go on a walk. Instead of the cake, I can whatever. And yes, track how much pain that has, because that cake's only going to give you pleasure for 3 minutes. So you've only got to distract yourself for like 3 minutes, right? And then you've got this enormous, and once you start tracking these decisions, start putting, it's like, oh my gosh, yeah, I could sit down for 10 minutes or 20 minutes and gossip or whatever, or I could make a call that could make me enough money to go get an Escalade, right? You get what I'm saying? As soon as we start tracking this, we can make much better decisions. But here's the cool thing. The more you do this, the more we have the switch. Eventually, because again, the only reason people do unhealthy stuff is because of that initial boost, right? But the more you have neuroplasticity, the more we focus on this again and again and again, the more the healthy thing will eventually create that initial pleasure. It'll give you that kick. And the unhealthy thing will give you the negative kick. And once it's down here, you're done. You're cured. This is what we call our addiction switch. Once this happens, it can be 3 to 5 days, maybe a little longer, not much longer, because unhealthy things your body doesn't like. Your body, when people say it doesn't take much discipline or it's really hard to quit smoking, it's really hard to keep smoking, right? How much discipline and hard work does it take to keep drinking, or to keep, no matter how much cigarettes cost, no matter how bad you smell, no matter how hard it is to breathe or sleep or whatever, or eat or even taste food, you keep doing it, that takes discipline. That takes commitment, right? And if we can redirect that commitment to anything else, you're going to be much better off. But once this happens, you're cured. You never make bad decisions again. You're not going to, the only reason you masturbate is because of that initial pleasure. But if you realize I could read a book, or I could, write a love letter to my spouse, right? I could do something like more productive. It's like, once that becomes a dopamine hit, you're cured. The reason, again, the only reason we do things is because of this first 3 to 5 minutes, this first 1 to 30 seconds, 90 seconds. That's it. Once we keep doing the healthy thing, eventually this will switch. It doesn't take long, about 3 to 5 days. And now eating vegetables actually gives you the high. And you get there when, if you go to try to do the unhealthy thing, your body repels it, right? You're not on that frequency, right? And so if you try to eat cake and you're healthy, you actually get sick. You don't like it. You don't enjoy it, because it's like if you don't smoke and you smoke, you get you just like pass out. It's not a good feeling. Same thing with drinking or anything. Once your body will reject it. You won't want the thing that is addictive. This is what we call the addiction switch. This is where your feelings and pain and pleasure, right here is where everything is, right here in this little circle here. The no discipline rule. The addiction switch is where the initial feelings of pain and pleasure and rewards are inverse. The same activity creates the opposite result. Unhealthy activity is painful immediately and painful later on. Healthy activity is pleasurable immediately and later on requiring no discipline. So again, this is why you don't need discipline. When I tell people you can work out whenever you want and you can eat whatever you want and you can drop 100 pounds, which Anna and a few other people have done now. A few actually down now like 60 pounds, right? Does it take any discipline at all? It doesn't. And here's the thing people don't realize. The things you want to eat right now, you're not going to want to eat once you get healthy. Once you get healthy, eating vegetables will, I know it's crazy, but eating vegetables, eating right will actually give you that kick. Not eating cake. Eating cake will make you sick, right? You'll actually want to walk after you eat. You'll want to go on exercise. You'll want to do push-ups. You'll want to do this stuff, and it will give you a high, because in not doing it, if you don't work out, you're going to feel sick, right? This is exactly where we want to be. This is how we work on it. That's the octopus, the time octopus, the book review for the Marshmallow Test. I love you.